The city of Milford, Connecticut is steeped in New England charm. But it's more down home than some of the upscale areas along the Long Island Sound. Just the place for laid-back Kelsey Monahan.
Kelsey loved the beach, yeah. The sound of the waves and collecting seashells and just that atmosphere that comes with living near the beach.
The 28-year-old biologist took up residence here in the spring of 1998. After growing up in landlocked Old Wick, New Jersey, the move brought her the coastal lifestyle she craved and a new husband to boot.
I was playing at a restaurant in Milford, and she came to see me. I remember there was some light shining in from behind her, and she had this blonde hair, and it's all curly, and I thought she was beautiful.
Kelsey's life forever changed when she locked eyes with California transplant Matt Monahan, a gym equipment salesman and aspiring performer.
From what she's told me, they fell in love at first sight. You know, she fell in love with him that night, and the rest was history.
Now, after 2 years of wedded bliss, the couple plans to put down roots just steps from the sand and surf. Tired of their cramped walk-up, they recently landed a good real estate deal on, of all places, Bittersweet Avenue.
We were renting the apartment, and the house went on the market. We just asked about it because it was kind of run down, but it had potential. So we ended up getting it for a really great price, and yeah, it was a dream.
A dream house that in 8 months will be filled with the pitter-patter of little feet.
Are you serious?
She just brought me this pregnancy test. I was scared, I was confused, but mainly I was happy, you know, that we were gonna have a baby.
Seems like Kelsey has it all. A loving husband, new home, and now a baby on the way. However, little does she know her sweet life will soon have a bitter ending. Memorial Day weekend 2001 is an unusual one in Milford. A sudden dip in temperature has kept locals and visitors out of the water. And to make matters worse, trouble's brewing on land as well. At 8 o'clock Friday night, resident Matt Monahan makes a frantic call to police.
I have an emergency. My wife is unconscious. I don't know what happened.
Matt came home and found Kelsey, his wife, bound with rope and almost dead. The way she was being strangled with the rope was set up in a way that she was hogtied, and any movement she made would strangle her worse.
Milford Police Detective Steve Wydra is enjoying the night off when he learns of the terrifying incident at the Monahans' apartment.
It's just a location you really didn't expect to have a major assault occur. It's a quiet area most of the time. Not a lot of criminal activity in that area. Led me to believe that it was someone who knew the Monahans.
The city fire department is first on the scene, with police and crime scene techs right on their heels. They find Kelsey lying still on the floor, in the middle of an area the couple uses for storage. While husband Matt watches helplessly, the firemen struggle to revive Kelsey.
Kelsey had been assaulted, hit in the face, and strangled with the rope. We kind of knew it didn't look good from the beginning.
Although the emergency workers managed to get a heartbeat, Kelsey is barely breathing. They can't get her to the hospital fast enough.
She was taken to Bridgeport Hospital, 10 to 15 minutes away. Bridgeport Hospital deals with trauma-type cases.
While Kelsey struggles to survive, investigators send the rope that was around her neck to the lab and try to figure out how such an ugly thing could happen to so beautiful a woman right in her own home.
The intruder that came into the house did not ransack the house. It looked like he was in one room of the house just looking for one thing.
Husband Matt tells police he was only gone an hour, leaving Kelsey to run an errand.
My brother Danny had asked me to help him move a Stairmaster up to the second floor of his girlfriend's house, and she lived not far from where I lived.
When he returned, Matt claims he was stunned to find his wife unconscious on the floor and immediately grabbed his pocket knife to try and free her.
It was tight around her neck. It was really tight. I was just saying, don't leave me. Come back. Don't go away. Come back.
Wake up! Wake up!
Matt says he then tried to revive Kelsey using CPR. When that failed, he called for help. Investigators plan to speak to Matt further, but first they take a look around and quickly find a telltale clue just inches from where Kelsey was tied up.
We noticed that there was a safe in the room that had the door opened, and it looked like someone had gone through it.
Last time he checked, Matt says he and Kelsey had about $1,000 cash in that vault.
We kept big bills in there so we wouldn't spend them, you know, from bonuses I got from work and stuff like that.
But sifting through the safe, detectives find only legal papers and letters.
This led us to believe that it was a home invasion, that the intruder knew what he was looking for, and that maybe Kelsey was the only one home at the time, and that he could easily get her to give him the combination of the safe by assaulting her.
After inspecting the doors and windows, police conclude if the perp's motive was burglary, it probably wasn't random.
There was no forced entry to the house. We believe Kelsey let the intruder in, probably believing that she either knew him or was not a threat.
This gets the veteran detectives wondering if that someone could possibly be the man right in front of them.
Do you suspect anyone headed out for your wife?
No, we don't have any enemies.
Matt had a disposition that he didn't seem overly concerned that his wife was assaulted and in the hospital, and his story that he had to move some exercise equipment for his brother was a story that we needed to confirm to see if we could rule him out as a suspect in this case.
When the lawmen press Matt to drive back to the station with them, reluctantly, he agrees.
The fact that I was going to the police station when my wife was at the hospital tells me that they just didn't want me to come down there and get a beach pass or something.
Either Kelsey's husband is coping with grief in his own peculiar way, or something far more sinister has washed up on Milford's shores. It's midnight on Friday, May 25th, 2001. Just 4 hours since Kelsey Monahan's husband discovered her roped and unconscious in their Milford, Connecticut apartment. Now Kelsey, a month pregnant with the couple's first child, lies hooked up to a respirator in the ICU, barely clinging to life. And her mom, Joan, is inconsolable.
I remember not being able to breathe. Just like, you know, I couldn't breathe.
Doctors don't know how long Kelsey will survive. They believe in her struggle to break free from her noose, the rope actually tightened and cut off her oxygen supply.
I couldn't believe this was happening. We were happy we were gonna have a baby. We just bought this house. Things were great, and now they're saying they didn't expect her to make it through the night. I couldn't believe it. All of this was just so surreal.
At police headquarters, husband Matt is fighting his own uphill battle as detectives scrutinize his cool demeanor and uncanny timing.
I got a phone call to help my brother. I had to go help him move a piece of equipment. I came back and I found my wife.
It was suspicious that the time that Matt leaves the house with his wife alone there for an hour, and she ends up getting strangled and the house robbed during that hour.
Matt not being there that night when this happened did look bad.
By now, word of this shocking assault has already leaked to the press, and some local reporters, like Brian McCready, are just as suspicious of Matt.
My original thought was that it had to be the husband.
Wake up.
We had heard so many things about Matt, but he definitely had a past that, you know, was the party lifestyle, that he had a lot of different odd jobs. We just heard a lot of negative stuff about him.
I wasn't really worried about how it looked. I wasn't worried about looking suspicious.
At Matt and Kelsey's apartment, investigators continue to process the crime scene. After combing through every nook and cranny of the couple's duplex, finally, in the living room, hidden at the bottom of a weathered trunk, they find something that cements their case.
We discovered a book that explained tying knots and how to tie knots in ropes.
In fact, the old hardback illustrates how to make dozens of complicated knots. Flipping through the pages, detectives land on an entire section devoted to making the dangerous type of knots used on Kelsey.
The hog tying of Kelsey is not something that an average person would know how to tie knots. It's a very intricate knot that she was tied in. So we knew that that person had to have a better than average knowledge of knot tying.
Investigators present husband Matt with the incriminating book and demand an explanation.
What is this?
Explain this to me.
It's a book. I don't know.
I told him Kelsey got that from one of her relatives, and I don't even remember. It was in a trunk full of family stuff. I never even looked at the book.
A story detectives aren't buying. Frustrated, police try a different tack. They quiz Matt about the open safe, asking if anyone else knew about it or had the combination.
Which one of you managed the safe?
Mostly her.
Kelsey was the only one that could open it because I was impatient and I didn't never remember the combination. So she had to open it up.
Although the explanation is plausible, the savvy lawmen wonder if there's more to the story. Could there be another reason Kelsey was keeping her husband from their cash?
It did make us start thinking about Matt a little more. Who does he owe money to? Is he involved in drugs? And would that make Matt want to either assault his wife or have someone assault her for him?
Did you attack your wife?
No, I've never laid a hand on my wife.
Matt balks at this insinuation, but the line of questioning does spark his memory about a recent incident.
Matt said a few days before this horrific beating, a man named Anthony came to the Monahan store.
And I thought it must be the painter that Kelsey hired.
Hey, are you Matt?
He's dressed in a kind of t-shirt and looked like a painter. And he goes, no, I'm not the painter.
The mystery man then asked Matt if he knew a woman named Erica Riva. Matt claims he told the surprise visitor Erica was an old friend he hadn't seen in months. That's when the conversation got even stranger.
He said, do you owe her money? And I said, I don't think I do. If she thinks I owe her money, have her call me, and then I'll send her a check.
Before Matt could get any more information, he says Anthony turned to leave, mumbling, I must be mistaken. Matt tells police he watched the curious caller drive off in a black car. Then, like any good husband, he immediately went upstairs to tell his wife about the odd encounter.
Anthony? Nervous.
Kelsey felt a little threatened by it and really wanted Matt to put it on record with police, just so that they would be aware that this guy did come to their house and ask for money.
No, this isn't good. Maybe we need to go to the police.
No.
Yeah, I think we should.
Matt debated whether to call long-lost pal Erica first and ask her about Anthony's surprise visit. But Kelsey insisted he go straight to Milford PD and file a complaint, so he did. Now, Matt has a sick feeling this stranger may have something to do with Kelsey's attack.
Just didn't feel right. And 3 days later, she's assaulted.
Detectives aren't sure what to think of the bizarre tale.
It was a weird occurrence that someone would go to somebody's house and say you owe a debt and then walk away.
And as Matt continues, his story just doesn't ring true.
We became suspicious of some of his answers and some things that he was attempting to hide.
Detectives are especially wary of the curious complaint Matt filed just before the attack. The report says the officer Matt spoke to followed up with his friend Erica Riva at her Milford home.
When we interviewed Erica, she said that she knows Matthew, but there was a conflict in their stories where Matt says that he did not owe any money to Erica, and Erica said the opposite, saying that Matthew did owe somewhere over $1,000 to her.
So the officer asked Erica point blank if she sent a man named Anthony over to the Monahans to collect the debt.
Did you send someone to collect it?
Oh, no.
She was adamant in her denial that she knew anybody named Anthony or that she had sent anyone over to the Monahan house asking for money.
Really appreciate your time today. Again, I'm sorry to bother you.
On his way out, the officer spotted a black car with Missouri tags parked on the street. Since visitors from the Midwest are not that common in Milford, he added the plate number to his report. The initial officer didn't know what to make of the conflicting stories and was skeptical about the event Matt reported.
The police thought that it was suspicious that Kelsey didn't go down with him to file the police report, that it was Matt who went down. So the question is, did somebody really come to the door 2 days before?
Police wonder if husband Matt is spinning an outlandish yarn to take the heat off himself, or if he's behind an assault for hire that went tragically wrong. Saturday of Memorial Day weekend 2001 is far from festive for Kelsey Monahan and her family. Just yesterday, the expectant mom was picking out paint for her new home. Now, she languishes on life support after being brutally beaten and strangled, while loved ones pray for her recovery.
Even though the doctor said it's the medicine that's keeping her alive, you know, there was no brain activity at all. Everybody's just hoping that maybe by a miracle that she would come back to life.
Milford, Connecticut police are hoping for a breakthrough of their own with Kelsey's husband, Matt.
Tell me what happened to your wife. Did you tie your wife up?
No.
Detectives have their suspicions, but they don't have a shred of hard evidence against Matt. However, before letting him go, they make a quick call to his brother, Danny, the person Matt claimed to be with when Kelsey was brutally assaulted.
Detective Miller, he loved it. They were great. They were good.
As expected, Danny wholeheartedly corroborates Matt's alibi.
It's always tough when your alibi is a family member because family members love you no matter what you do, so they're gonna stick their neck out for you, even lie for you on occasion.
Although police plan to investigate husband Matt further, at this point they have no choice but to release him.
Can I just go see my wife?
You can, Matt, but we're gonna be in touch.
By the next day, word of the horrific attack has run rampant throughout the Seaside community.
This is a scary crime. Police officers were approached by residents wanting to know if there was a stalker in the area. Should they lock their doors? Should they be more careful? When someone comes in and assaults a young female who was pregnant, shocked a lot of people.
So investigators waste no time trying to drum up fresh leads. Police cordon off the entire neighborhood and stop every vehicle and pedestrian coming in or out.
Police were asking neighbors, do they see anything suspicious? Do they see a car in the driveway? Do they see people going around the community, like knocking on doors?
As nervous neighbors rack their brains trying to help detectives, several do recall seeing an unfamiliar car in the area around the time of the crime.
Some people had reported in the neighborhood that they saw a black vehicle at the Monahan household.
Sightings that just might give Matt's story about the suspicious stranger more weight. But if this is the elusive Anthony who came around to settle someone else's debt, he wasn't alone.
Neighbors said a man and a woman were driving this black car.
With renewed optimism, police keep the roadblock going for hours. Their diligence pays off when later in the day, a few folks report seeing a strange couple in the area selling magazines door to door.
The people going door to door selling magazines are not normally from Milford or the Connecticut area. They're usually from out of state. There's a possibility that they could be going door to door and robbing people or strong-arming them for money.
Investigators aren't sure if the black car spotted by neighbors belongs to the roving sales team or not. But they do know Kelsey probably opened the door to her attacker and may have exposed the small safe on the floor behind her.
You see a lot of, robbery schemes where, people knock on doors so they can get in and see what's going on and to later return later on.
As the lawmen continue their probing, it turns out several neighbors had run-ins with the pesky sales folks. Few gave them the time of day. However, one resident said he chatted with them for a bit.
During this conversation, he had purchased a magazine and he had a name on the receipt showing who this person was.
Clear as day, the name on the receipt reads Tyler Caro. Detectives' spirits soar. Just as they're about to issue an APB on Tyler, a patrolman spots him pounding the pavement with his partner less than a mile from Kelsey's house.
There's possibilities we had a break in the case.
Yes, officer, I'm Tyler Carroll.
Police want to know if they were the couple neighbors saw driving around in a black sedan the day of the attack. And if Tyler in particular fits the description of the stranger who showed up at the Monahans' door days earlier. A quick background check on salesman Tyler immediately raises flags.
We did follow up on the person's selling magazines in the area, and his criminal history showed a drug arrest.
Perhaps the magazine peddlers were hoping to supplement their skimpy sales commission with some cold, hard cash. For exclusive Nightmare Next Door interviews, check out investigationdiscovery.com. It's Memorial Day 2001, nearly 3 days since Kelsey Monahan was strangled and left for dead in her Milford, Connecticut home. At the hospital, her family agonizes over her condition.
There was one point where there was a tiny bit of activity at the base of her brain, and I was really excited about it. But it was just from the respirator. It was nothing.
Doctors doubt she will ever regain consciousness, a prognosis that devastates Kelsey's mom.
It was the hardest thing I've ever been through, the most painful thing I've ever been through. You know, you've heard of the Wailing Wall in Jerusalem. You're wailing and not a tear is coming.
Police are working tirelessly to try and find out the who, how, and why of this tragic crime.
People in the neighborhood were very, very frightened by this. No one knew if this was a targeted crime or if this was just a random act of violence. They implored police to solve this case quickly.
Thankfully, detectives are already questioning two individuals who just might have something to do with Kelsey's murder: Tyler Caro and his sales partner, Marilyn Rue. Neighbors believe the pair may have been in a black car the day Kelsey was attacked. With Tyler's drug history, investigators believe the Monahan safe, full of cash, would have been more than tempting when he showed up at Kelsey's door trying to sell her a magazine subscription. Did this addict take drastic measures to fund his next fix? Tyler insists he's cleaned up his act and would never harm anyone. He's just out trying to make an honest buck.
I'm clean, I haven't done anything. I'm trying to change my life, I swear to God.
He denied any part of this assault. He was never on that street and did not know where that house would be located.
Although Tyler's partner Marilyn has a clean record, detectives grill her in a separate room to compare stories.
Tyler has a criminal past.
He does.
Oh my God.
He does.
She cooperated in the investigation for the most part. She said that she did not know anything about the assault that occurred, and that she does not have a black motor vehicle.
In fact, the struggling pair don't have a car at all. They've been relying on public transportation. Without an ounce of evidence against the sales folks, police have no choice but to let them go.
Thanks a lot.
We were able to rule them out. We didn't believe they were involved.
Later that evening, after hours of soul searching, Kelsey's family makes the heart-wrenching decision to remove her from life support. Since she's only a few weeks along, there's nothing doctors can do to save the pregnancy.
I was in bed with her when they shut off the respirator, so I was, you know, just there for the last of it, you know, and her heartbeat just got slower until it was no more.
It still hurts so bad. But it was the best thing to just let her go.
As the family makes arrangements for Kelsey's funeral, detectives send her body to the coroner. When the autopsy report comes in, it confirms what police suspected. Whoever surprised Kelsey at the door most likely beat her with his bare fists to get her to open the cash-filled safe.
It appeared that there was no weapon used, probably just blunt force to the face.
Then, Kelsey's assailant bound her so tightly she couldn't break free or call police.
Kelsey had been hogtied with rope in a way that if she struggled, it would strangle her more.
Ironically, it's this very same rope that just might lead police to Kelsey's killer.
It did come back with some DNA found on the rope, and that led us to do more investigating to determine who might have left DNA on that rope.
If investigators can identify who that blood belongs to, they might just have their man.
When we learned that there was DNA on the rope, it was big news for us.
It's been a week since Kelsey was brutally assaulted. And now, with her death ruled a homicide, the stakes have gotten even higher for the Milford PD. With no fresh leads on their radar, they circle back for a closer look at husband Matt.
Matt didn't seem like the spouse of a woman who had just passed away due to a strangulation, or someone invading his house and doing this to his wife. He did not show a lot of emotion.
But detectives wonder, why would Matt want to harm his wife in the first place? It doesn't take long for police to come up with a possible motive.
We learned that Kelsey's life insurance was raised very recently in case of her death.
It seems just 2 months ago, Kelsey upped her life insurance to $300,000, leaving every penny to Matt.
You just put the date right there.
Okay.
Having that bump up in insurance policy becomes suspicious and does start to lean towards looking at a spouse or someone who would collect on that insurance.
And when police learn how he's spending it, they're blown away.
Matt's behavior after Kelsey's loss of spending money on a highly expensive dental procedure and other things led us to believe that maybe he somehow could be involved for the insurance money.
After learning about Matt's penchant for his pearly whites, lawmen pepper him with more questions. They also take his DNA.
I just need you to open your mouth.
And although Matt is compliant, he's growing tired of detective suspicions.
We both got insurance. I didn't think anything of it. We had policies on each other.
Insurance papers, done.
And as for the cosmetics,
I had implants put in 6 months before the assault on Kelsey. You have to wait for your bone to grow around them or something. After Kelsey's murder, let's just finish what was started.
trying to keep his cool, Matt swears up and down that he'd never hurt his beloved Kelsey. His mother-in-law agrees.
I never, ever thought Matt had anything to do with it. I'd been up to their house and stayed overnight many times. I could see the love they had for one another. You could just see it and you could feel it. And you know how that is. When you're with somebody you love, everybody around it knows it.
And it turns out Matt's DNA does not match the blood found on the rope that was wrapped around his wife's neck. Greatly relieved, the widower is anxious to move on.
The police, they're doing their job. They did it exactly the way they should have. I just want to get past this and get to the person that's responsible.
Husband Matt still insists that the mysterious debt collector, Anthony, who came to the door just days before Kelsey was attacked, is the culprit. Matt is convinced Anthony came back and stole the money he claimed Matt owed to their mutual friend, Erica.
It was just weird. That's why I filed the police report, because it didn't feel right.
Detectives are starting to agree that the elusive Anthony might be to blame. Looking back through the report Matt filed, they spot the notation about a black car from Missouri parked on Erica's block, and on a hunch, run the plate number. Turns out the car is registered to Luis Antonio Rodriguez, and he has a rap sheet a mile long.
He had numerous arrests, probably about 25, for robberies, home invasions, assaults. We also learned that he was part of a well-known gang in the Connecticut area, which also had branches out in Missouri.
Sure sounds like police might finally know Anthony's true identity. If Luis Antonio did make another surprise visit to the Monahans, the 41-year-old career con could have easily overtaken Kelsey to get to the couple safe.
Knowing that Luis had a big rap sheet with a lot of felonies would lead police to think that he's obviously not afraid to strong-arm people.
So police race over to Erica's. But Luis's black sedan, spotted there by an officer just days ago, is no longer parked on the street outside her home. Detectives knock at the door, and Erica answers. So they give her another chance to talk, and she does.
First and foremost, do you know Antonio Luis Rodriguez?
Otherwise known as Anthony.
Yes.
Erica admits to knowing a Luis Rodriguez and had known him for a short time.
Erica even confesses that the car belongs to Luis, and that he knew Matt owed her money. But she insists she never sent Luis to the Monahans. According to Erica, Luis left Milford around 8 that fateful night and arrived home in Independence, Missouri the following evening.
Once we learned that Luis Rodriguez was out in Missouri and he had left Connecticut shortly after the major assault, we sent a couple detectives out to Missouri to interview him.
Once in the Midwest, the detectives quickly get their prime suspect to meet them at a local police station.
You help her out.
Do you go by Anthony or do you go by Luis?
Sometimes I go by Anthony. My middle name's Antonio.
We expected that he would claim to have no dealings with Matt or Kelsey, and that he was nowhere near the crime scene.
However, Lewis calmly tells detectives he did stop by the Monahans' home, but when Matt denied owing an old debt, Lewis told Erica to handle her problem through the courts. Lewis insists that's the only trip he made to the Monahans.
He denied any part of this assault and homicide.
Police doubt Lewis is telling the truth, so they reach out to the crime lab for help.
We were able to obtain a DNA sample from Luis Rodriguez that we could test against the DNA that was found on the rope at the crime scene.
Once again, the results leave detectives scratching their heads because Lewis is not a match. As it turns out, there's another explanation.
We started looking in-house at other people who were on the scene, and we later learned that the DNA was left by one of our detectives.
Apparently, the detective's bandaged finger accidentally bled on the rope when he put it into the evidence bag.
This rope DNA, it was just happened to be a dead end for us.
And it seems, for now, so is their pursuit of Luis Antonio. Police keep him on their radar, but with nothing concrete tying him to the crime, they grudgingly let him go and head back to Connecticut.
That's what's frustrating. The guy didn't leave anything. I couldn't believe it. He left no evidence at all.
The summer comes and goes, and police have no new leads in Kelsey's case. Eventually, the passing seasons become years, but Kelsey's mom never gives up.
Every year I come up to see these people just to let them know somebody's out here who wants to know what's happening.
Just when it looks like Kelsey's attacker will never be caught, a hot tip thaws the cold case. Police will soon be staring into the very eyes of evil. It's been nearly a decade since mom-to-be, Kelsey Monahan, was savagely attacked and murdered in her beachside home. Yet her assailant is still roaming free.
The police didn't have enough to get someone, and I was thinking that someone was going to get away with murder.
The Kelsey homicide was never forgotten about. It was still being investigated behind the scenes. There's always that possibility down the road. Someone who knows something will say something.
Then in the summer of 2010, that's exactly what happens. A young Missouri woman named Carla Trout, ready to get something off her chest, shows up at the local police station with an interesting tale.
Why exactly did you come to me tonight?
Something's just been weighing on my mind. When I was in high school, this would have been 10 years ago.
And I told her these are my OJ gloves. She knew what they were. I know.
Luis Antonio Rodriguez. She didn't know him, but she got quite an earful.
A girl in Missouri had spoken with Luis Rodriguez, and he admitted to her that he had strangled a woman in Connecticut who ended up dying.
Back then, Carla was only in high school and scared to come forward.
Luis was supposed to be a high-ranking gang member. This gang is known for a lot of strong-arm activities, robbing, home invasions, drug running.
Just recently, 53-year-old Luis was arrested on federal weapons charges in Oklahoma. Crimes that will keep the parolee behind bars until 2025. So Carla's finally found the courage to speak up.
So can you describe Luis Rodriguez to me?
After taking Carla's statement, police also track down her friends who verify her story about Luis Antonio. And Missouri police immediately relay the tip to the Milford PD.
I was surprised that someone had come forward after so many years.
Since Luis refuses to talk, in January 2011, 10 years after pregnant Kelsey's death, investigators extradite him back to Connecticut, where they charge him with 2 counts of murder. Kelsey's family is overcome with relief.
I got a phone call telling me that they were going to arrest Luis Rodriguez. And it was kind of like, finally. It was like, finally.
I'd been holding my breath for 10 years, you know, and they finally got this guy. I'm just like, oh, Jesus.
But the joy doesn't last long. While Luis finally admits he did beat, strangle, and rob Kelsey, he swears he never meant to kill her, setting up his plan to plead guilty to manslaughter.
It's still my feeling that you intended to kill this woman.
I just had her to keep her still. She kept moving. She kept moving. I
The
just
fact
wanted
that
to keep
he
her still.
hogtied her, he had to have known that there was a really good chance that she would die from strangulation. So it's not entirely believable for him to think that she was going to be okay after that.
Kelsey's husband, Matt, isn't buying the story either.
This whole manslaughter thing is just because I cut the rope around her neck. That wasn't manslaughter. That was intentional. He meant for her to die.
Despite Matt's outrage, in August 2013, Luis Rodriguez agrees to a plea deal and is sentenced to 20 years in prison without parole. But this term won't begin until after he serves out his stint in Oklahoma.
The judge said at the sentencing, he said, you're not going to be walking around outside until you're well into your 70s, if at all.
Based on Luis's confession, here's what police think went down that fateful night. 3 days after confronting Matt about the money he supposedly owed friend Erica, greedy Luis, aka Anthony, goes back to the Monaghan's house, determined to find out what's in the safe.
Luis Rodriguez probably was watching the house from a safe distance, and he waited for Matt to leave before he would go up and knock on the door to try to collect the debt.
Possibly thinking the visitor was a painter, Kelsey opens the door to her worst nightmare.
Luis Rodriguez forcibly entered his way into the house and ran into Kelsey. He hit her in the head.
Luis continues to beat Kelsey and forces her to unlock the safe. Once the vault's open, Luis grabs $1,000 in cash, hogties Kelsey, and flees in his black sedan to go party with friends.
Kelsey, I'm sure, struggled to try to release herself from the binds, and it ultimately led to her death.
With Luis's confession, Kelsey's husband is completely exonerated once and for all.
I always felt badly for Matt. First of all, he loved her. He was already going through his pain. And then to live in a town where everywhere you go, people look at you like you killed your wife, you know, had to have been extremely difficult for him.
I felt I was on public trial basically the whole time. I'm sure there are people that thought that I had something to do with it, but I felt like I was fully exonerated after the confession.
Now, with the real culprit locked up, Matt takes comfort in a parting love letter written by Kelsey herself. Police found it buried among the legal papers in the Monaghan's infamous safe.
Kelsey had written a note to Matthew, and the note started off like this: "Dear Matthew, if you are reading this, something has happened to me." I mean, I get chills just thinking about that. And then the letter proceeded to tell him that things like find another woman and be happy, get married again. You know, just a loving letter.
That was very, very emotional. I never thought in a million years that I would be reading that letter and she would be gone and I'd be alive.
And as time passes, for both Kelsey's husband and mom, the pain of her death is replaced with fond memories of her life.
There'll never be complete closure. I don't want to put her in a box and put her away. Gotta honor her and gotta keep Kelsey alive, you know, with memories.
When I see that picture of Kelsey, I just see her big smile and her head tilted like this and her curly hair flowing. Yeah, she always had a beautiful smile, yes.